make, actually, is, and I have to do this, it's a confession to my parents who are sitting right there at that table fucking staring at me. They don't know this, at least I hope they don't, but about 6 years ago, we were having one of those like family fun days, and it ended, and then I was in their car, and I shit my pants in the backseat of their car. You guys know that? Okay. Doesn't look like it. Anyway, if you've never done this before, which, oh cool, like, would you do it in your parents' backseat? Because it really ups the ante. It's like so confusing to shit your pants as an adult in your parents' car, okay? And the thing was, like, I'd spent, like, you know, fucking 15 years, like, proving to them that I am competent and I'm independent and I can wipe my own ass. And you cannot go around shitting yourself, like, in front of them. They're not going to believe you, you know? And anyway, I made up some excuse and I left. And I was raised by these two people, my parents, who saw child rearing as like a way to up team membership. And if you wanted something, you built it yourself. Like, we didn't have a lot of money, and they used to always say to me, you know why we don't live in a big house? It's because we want you to see the world. And I did. They were from New Orleans, and every Christmas and every summer we would go to New Orleans, and then when I was 6 we moved to France, and then eventually we moved to North Carolina so my mom could go to grad school, and my dad took work as a baker. And fast forward, I started touring in a punk band, and so what you do is you, like, when you're in a punk band, you like go vegan and start doing P90X, and I didn't want to do P90X, so I went vegan. And I was sick. I was really sick, and I'd been shitting water for a year, and I'd been going to all these doctors, and they kept telling me that it was because I was vegan, and I would say, why? And they're like, because we said so. And I was like, yeah, that didn't work. My dad said it's not going to work. And then they were all saying, we want to cut you open. And I would say, well, why do you want to cut me open? And they would say, yeah, just to see. And I'm like, see what? And they're like, I don't know. It's like, that's not good enough, man. Fuck y'all. And I was like the kind of sick where you like give up on yourself, you know, where you just are like, okay, I'm just gonna be sick for the rest of my life, and fuck it, you know. And my mom never gave up on me, and she said, I just want you to try this one other guy. His name's Gil Alvarado. And so I did. I walked into Gil's office, and I was like, listen, you got to know something. I'm fucking vegan, and I'm not going to stop being vegan. And he looked at me, and he said, oh, that's great. And I was like, and basically, what Gil's diet consisted of, he put me on, he's a naturopath, and he put me on this diet that was like whole foods, so nothing out of a box, nothing out of a can. Everything was really fresh, no sugar, no caffeine, which means no chocolate. And if you've ever PMS, that's a bit fucky. No, it's like, and anyway, even though I kind of thought this guy is probably like got a stockpile of fucking hula hoops in his back office, I'm gonna give him a chance. He got desperate, and he gave me a chance. And I walked out of his office, and that week, I shit solid for the first time in a year. So around that time, he's got business cards. Around that time, my parents looked at me, and they were like, you're not going to college. And I was like, and so we had a couple $1,000 saved up for what was supposed to be my college, which years had passed, and they were like, well, listen, you're on tour all the time, let's build a cabin on our land, because they had moved to Chatham County, and they lived in this geodesic dome. They're weird. And then you'll always have a home. And I was like, you know, that sounds great. And one of the reasons that it sounded so great is because I was living in Durham. This was very cool. And I felt like I needed to go home. And it was weird, because it wasn't like I need to go, you know, like mooch off my parents, go home. It was like, I felt like I was gonna miss something, and I didn't know what it was. And so my dad and I built this cabin. Mostly my dad. My dad built the cabin. Anyway, and we built this cabin and I lived there, and then in the spring of 2007 my mom quit her job as a French teacher to start a food truck, and there were taco trucks in Durham, and but there were no like hipster trucks, so like nobody paid attention to it like media-wise. So this was a pretty scary new thing, and in the spring of that year she started spotting blood. By October of that year, she was at the gym and she was doing something and she like pulled something in her stomach and she thought, I pulled a muscle, but this hurts and this is serious. So she made an appointment with Gil because I had had so much success with him. And Gil has a 3-month waiting list for new patients, and so she waited. And in January of that year, my band went on their first European tour, and you know, I was so excited because this is like the coolest thing you can do if you're like a punk band, you go to Europe. And I went with my 2 best friends, and the shows were amazing, and I had like the worst fucking time ever, and I couldn't figure out why, but I just thought, I gotta go home, I need to go home, and I'm not like a homesick kid, so I didn't really understand what was going on. And Mom had seen Gil in January, and he had said, you need to get an ultrasound. And a couple weeks later, I called them from Germany and said, what's up? And they said, we just got home from Philly, we just bought a food truck, and we're gonna turn it into a crepe truck. And I'm like, fuck yeah, you know, it's great. And then I get home on Valentine's Day 2008, and they say, how was your tour, honey? And I said, it sucked. And they were like, they found something. The thing you need to know about my family is my mom's dad died of cancer, his twin brother died of cancer, her best friend's husband died of cancer, my Uncle Bob died of cancer. There are no chemo success stories in my family. And when my mom was diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer on February 14th, Valentine's Day of 2008, she knew that chemo would not cure her body. And I knew that my mom had raised me as a fighter, and so I was going to fight for her fucking life, and I did. With my mom and with Gil, we looked all over the world for places for her to go so that she didn't have to go get chemo. Gil said, you definitely need this surgery, but if you don't believe in chemo, don't do it. And the hospital was calling her, telling her, if you don't do it, you're going to fucking die next week. I mean, the pressure. And Gil said, I hate to do this, but I've got to go on this trip, and I've got to be gone for 3 weeks. But Jody, the answer is inside of your heart. And my mom looked inside of herself, and she couldn't find her heart because it was buried under so much fucking fear. And basically, we ran out of time. So she did the chemo. And she dropped to like 98 pounds. And the thing is, we have this fucking food truck now. And my father and I, you know, like, me and my dad, we see this food truck, it's like the bane of our fucking existence, because like, we're working all day long, and then we come home and we're trying to take care of my mom, which, if y'all have taken care of your parents, it's impossible. I mean, you would have, but come on. Yeah, like, especially my family's like crazy. Anyway, and so we're just like, like we can't, you know, we're dying under all this stress. But for my mom, this food truck, it's the only proof she has that she's alive, and she's not going to let cancer take that fucking food truck away from her. So we do it. We do the truck, and then she goes into remission, and she finds a place in Southern Pines, North Carolina, of all places, that teaches her about how to not let cancer come back into her body. And she's been doing all this research, and it just seems like going raw vegan, of all things, is the thing that is going to save her life. And so she goes to the center, and it's kind of like a summer camp for recovering moms. We like send her away, you know, and she's calling, and they're teaching her all this stuff like about being raw, and about being vegan, and about meditating and chilling the fuck out. And then she calls one day and she's like, and they've taught me about coffee enemas. And if you're thinking that coffee enemas is where you brew coffee and then stick it up the wrong hole, you are correct. Look it up on the internet. And I told my friend Shane Jones, I was like, what is coffee enemas? And he was like, is that right? Well, I'm a tea man myself. But she looks amazing. She's doing great. And so I decide, you know, my mom, she lived, but the mom that my dad and I knew, she died. And she was replaced with this beautiful, strong woman, but it was time for me to go because my parents needed space to learn how to fall in love with each other again. And I needed space to learn how to... What the fuck just happened? I don't know. I need to, like, go do my own thing. So I moved to Philly. I don't know. And it was cool. It was fine. So I'm like, you got tattoos. I don't have any face tattoos that you know of. Anyway, so I moved to Philly, and I'm there for a year and a half, and it's great. And I get this call one day, and my mom's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I just got back from the gym," and she's like, "Your father has cancer." And my first thought is, he's not going to make it. I mean, you can't do this twice in 3 years and come out alive on the other side. Like, like the universe just doesn't, like, that's not the lesson here, you know, and your cell phone's gone off. And my mom tells me, but it's not like a serious, you know, I mean, it's serious, but it's highly treatable, and so we just start making jokes, like, Mom was the practice run, you know, and I move home like a couple weeks later, and it's throat cancer, and we were wrong. Like, my mom wasn't a practice run. I mean, if you've ever met my dad, you know that he is a man whose body is like a vehicle for everything, including eating, that's Benji Shirley, I know probably knows my dad. Anyway, including eating, which is like his favorite thing. I mean, it's all of our favorite things to do. And so they said, well, you know, I mean, he may lose some sense of taste, and he may go on a feeding tube. And what they meant was, he'll be on a feeding tube in 3 weeks, and he's not going to be able to taste shit. And so I would watch my dad. I mean, I would watch him every day. We got cable. He convinced my mom to get cable. He's like, "Bitch, I got cancer." And she's like, "All right, fine." And so we get cable, like, out the woods. And I would watch this guy, like, with the remote, like, flipping between Iron Chef and Cake Wars. And he's sitting there putting his, like, coconut milk in his feeding tube. And I'm like, somebody get this man a fucking grilled cheese sandwich. Like, but he couldn't eat it, because the thing was, he couldn't taste anything. And if he did taste something, it tasted awful. Awful. When you're sick like that, you gotta have goals, like, especially in chemo. So we asked my dad, "What do you want?" And he said, I want to go home. He wanted to make it to New Orleans for Christmas dinner. So this was our goal. I mean, the whole time. And it's becoming kind of like, there's a sense that this is, like, not possible. You know, he finished his treatment and he goes into remission, and we're taking him to the store like a kid in a fucking candy shop, like, just eat anything, like, you know, like pulling chocolate soy milk, like anything off the shelves, like pudding, pizza, anything. And it either doesn't taste like anything, or it tastes horrible, or it doesn't taste right. And so Christmas comes around, and we look at him and we say, "Do you still want to go to New Orleans?" And he looks at us and he's like, "Take me home. I want to go home. I want to go to New Orleans for Christmas. I gotta make it to New Orleans." So we say, okay. And we make the drive down to New Orleans. And my Aunt Jill, nobody does Christmas like my fucking Aunt Jill. Y'all have that aunt that makes 6 dishes for every one person there? That is my Aunt Jill. She is awesome. So we get there, and it is amazing. It's like, I mean, mirliton, and French bread, and turkey, and ham, and cauliflower soup, and broccoli casserole, and the fucking sweet potato thing with the fucking marshmallows on top, and gumbo. And they made the gumbo not spicy, just in case my dad would eat something. And so we sit down for Christmas dinner, and my Aunt Jill comes over to my dad. She says, "Honey, you want some? You want some gumbo?" And he's like, "All right, I'll try some." And my mom and I are sitting there just, like, bracing ourselves for what's going to be probably really disappointing. And he takes his first bite, and we're just looking at him like hawks, the poor man. And he sets his spoon down, and we're like, "How did it taste?" And he looks up at us kind of confused and happy, and he says, "Fucking awesome." Thanks.